Hello and welcome to Financial Planning Unlocked, brought to you by Rathbones Financial Planning, where we look at key financial planning topics for you and your family. The contents of this podcast do not constitute a recommendation or advice, and no action should be taken without seeking advice from a financial planner.
Hi everybody, I'm Ollie and I'm here with my colleague Charlotte Kennedy. We're two of the financial planners here at Rathbones and here to talk to you today about our Financial Wellbeing Report. So this is something we've been doing since 2018, and this year, because we've come over from Saunderson House, become a part of Rathbones, we've seen a bit of an expansion to what we've done. For the first time, we've got over 1,000 responses to our survey, and so quite a lot of really good data to talk about. We thought we would start off by mentioning that probably your best comparison here is going all the way back a few years to the last time we had an election. And what we're seeing today is some surprisingly different results. So if you think back, previous election, Jeremy Corbyn, lots and lots of worries about what the Labour Party would do when they got in. I think it was the major topic of conversation for our clients at the time. Whereas a bit of time's passed, this time we're looking at Starmer versus Sunak. And actually, it's a very, very different scenario. I think it's been said on one of the podcasts by David Coombs and his team, the gap we have between the two political parties in this country is relatively narrow. Firstly, I think we know who we're getting. I think general consensus is we'll have a Labour government. Even if we don't, the gap in terms of what I think we'll get between Starmer and Sunak is not that wide. They both kind of said the big taxes will stay as they are, income tax, capital gains tax. So we're not going to see anything major there. And I think for that reason, people aren't worried about a change in government, perhaps in the same way that they were a few years ago.
Yeah, so that in 2019, the biggest concern was the change in government, whereas at the moment, with the 2023 report, inflation was one of the top concerns. Whereas I imagine when we come to the 2024 report, that's going to be less of a concern given inflation's more under control. One of the concerns that people scored quite highly on the list was the overall well-being, so people's physical and mental well-being. That's consistently scored highly over the past few years.
We've sort of seen that as something that's linked into the financial side. Ultimately, why is financial well-being important? Well, it's important because it's going to let you do all the things you want to do in life. It's going to let you have the retirement you want. It's going to let you have all the things you want, go on the holidays you want. And actual physical, mental well-being is the other side of that. If either of those sides aren't there where you need them to be, then suddenly life isn't quite what you want it to be. And hopefully, I think this is a reflection that a lot of our clients, who are the people answering this, feel that the financial side is under control, at least as much as it can be, whereas that physical, mental well-being side is something that perhaps feels a little bit more outside of their control.
I think it's fair to say that following COVID, the importance of health and physical well-being has more weight. Firstly, there's been greater flexibility in terms of working arrangements, so an improved work-life balance, but it's also made people reflect on what they really want, out of life and what's important to them, and making sure that health is a priority.
Yeah, and so I think that's been the theme, and it's been a consistent theme for a couple of years now. That idea that you need to stay healthy, you need to look after other sides of things. So hopefully we keep the financial bit ticking in the background and people can sort of turn their focus there.
I think it's also quite an interesting finding that lots of people hadn't actually taken any action, but it may be that everything's already in place, but more people are having conversations with their advisors. I think it's fair to say that in uncertain times, given COVID, the war in Ukraine, inflation, I think sometimes that uncertainty can lead to a lack of decision making, the stress and anxiety around whether I'm making the right decision here. But I think us as financial advisors, it's important for us to refocus the client's goals and actually focusing on the goals rather than the performance-led kind of advice piece.
Yeah, and certainly it's relevant to say when we've got people here who are our clients saying, I'm not taking any actions, that's not necessarily to say nothing is happening. I think that's often a reflection that they're not doing anything differently. Those conversations have always been happening. That idea of having a proper, stable financial plan is already there. And hopefully it's a reflection that, a good proportion of our clients actually feel like all the guidance they need is already in place.
Yes. And I think one of the benefits of having regular annual reviews is allows us to refocus with the client what the priorities are each year. and can make sure that those action points are getting done.
Definitely. I think it's a good sign rather than a bad one that I've not taken any action. Although if anybody feels differently, please definitely get in touch with your advisor.
Yes, have more conversations, exactly. Ask more questions.
One other thing that was quite interesting in the early stages of the results here as well, I think it's a big topic to talk about because it's been in the press a lot recently, is later life care.
I think most people know someone that's either in a care home or been in a care home or have a live in care, and it's widely understood that care costs are very expensive and the costs are likely to continue to increase. I think a common misconception is that people are going to have to find the cost of care and add that to their existing expenditure, whereas usually your other expenditure is going to decrease as a result of having the care costs. You're not going to be spending the same day to day as you would be if you were living at home and in good health.
Definitely. I think, if you take it, the average cost of being in a care home, I think is somewhere just over £50,000 for a year. And if you're someone whose normal retirement expenditure for a couple is £25,000, £30,000, then you have a real issue there. You have to work out where that extra money is coming from. Obviously, there is a point where the state will come in and pick things up, but actually you have to have gone through almost all of your capital before that's the case. Now, if you're someone who's spending 80, 90, £100,000 plus a year in retirement, suddenly the idea of paying £55,000 for a care home, if a lot of the other things drop off, isn't quite as worrying. It's that idea that it's replacement expenditure rather than new expenditure.
And if it's a particular concern, it's something we can build into our cash flow planning. One client I'm looking after at the moment, she's got additional needs, and she's quite concerned that if her husband passed away before her, that she wouldn't be able to afford the care home costs because she would need specialist care. So I'm actually getting a quote for her so we can have a good understanding of whether it's affordable towards the end of life, and building that into the cash flow planning for her to give her peace of mind.
And it is quite individual as well, because there are care homes and then there are care homes. Not all are equal. Actually, a lot of our clients will want to be somewhere at the more expensive end of that. Nothing wrong with that at all. But it just means we need to work out in advance what they want, what that would look like for our clients, and so we can build the plan up around it. And actually, it's an early stage part of the plan rather than a late stage part of the plan, because often what we're looking at in a financial plan as well is how much wealth people can give away, which is a lovely segue into
inheritance tax planning. So the findings say that our clients are comfortable, they can support their beneficiaries, but they don't feel in control of actually ensuring the beneficiaries can use their wealth responsibly and also pass on their wealth tax efficiently. So IHT planning is a conversation we encourage with clients. It's not necessarily the nicest thing to think about, but it's an important one to think about. I think it's probably fair to say that some clients have stronger views than others in terms of actually how they feel about paying that tax.
Definitely. And the tax efficiency part is not as hard to do perhaps as you'd think. If we were to make a list for the average person saying, what are the best things you can do to mitigate inheritance tax? Well, for most people, near the top of that list is just to give money away. And if we can tell you, you don't need all the money you have, that you can comfortably give away amount X and it won't affect your lifestyle, it won't affect the care costs, it's the best thing you can do to mitigate inheritance tax, just to make those gifts nice and early.
And a lot of clients actually quite like the lifetime gifting because they can see the next generation actually enjoying those funds. If you're helping with a house deposit, for example, you're able to see your children enjoy living in a nicer, bigger space, and room for grandchildren, etc.
Definitely. And I think all of this, both the how the beneficiaries will use it and how much tax you want to save idea, it all links back to an idea that's come through a lot of these wellbeing reports over the years, this feather bedding versus feather boosting idea. So it was a phrase we coined a couple of years ago with the idea that what our clients want is generally to help their children with education, firstly, and secondly, with getting on the property ladder. But actually, our average client, at least when their children are young adults early in their careers, our average client is cautious about giving much more than that, because what they don't want to do is demotivate their children. It's a fine balance, but I think it's one actually most people walk very well from my experience.
I tend to find in meetings actually both parties tend to have slightly different views on what is a comfortable amount to gift beneficiaries, I think based on their own backgrounds and what they've experienced in their lifetimes. So it's definitely one that clients tend to go away and have a chat about after the meeting. We've had quite a few instances where we have family conferences where parents and children are in the room. There's full disclosure on assets, and what they would like the next generation to do with this wealth.
Definitely. And for those who've heard me talk about this before, you'll have heard this anecdote in the past, but we've had it certainly before where someone I've worked with has given money away to one of their children and had the conversations really, really early, going, okay, I don't want you to just spend this. This is long-term savings. It's important to keep it invested, keep it growing. And his son at the time was a teenager when those conversations started, now in his late 20s. And not that long ago, this person got a phone call going, Dad, my car's broken down. I need some money to deal with it. Dad immediately goes, well, what about the money I gave you? I know you've got that saved away. Can you use it for this? Oh, no, Dad, I can't. These are long-term savings. I can't touch that. I'm going to need some more help from you now. So it doesn't quite always work out the way you want it, but these messages really do get through. And from my experience, I can't think of an occasion where one of my clients has passed money down and had the conversations and then suddenly seen their 18-year-old pull out the money for something reckless and irresponsible at the time. We just don't see it very often, do we?
No, we definitely don't. And when the client turns 18 as well, we have to have those annual conversations about making sure their objectives are up to date and having the risk conversations. And I think that's a really good introduction into actually dealing with wealth responsibly and understanding about the risk and reward.
Definitely. A few people have a bit of fear about that to start with. It's something a lot of people will say, they're setting up a junior ISA for their 9-10-year-old or putting some money in trust. And the conversation will often go, oh, well, what happens when they turn 18? Oh, well, it becomes their money. They make their own decisions. The next question is, oh, but they don't have to know about it, do they? And so, well, actually, I'm afraid if we're working with you and you're one of our clients, the second someone turns 18 and we manage money for them, we have to sit down. We have to make sure because, we are responsible for making sure the money is doing what they want. So we have to talk about objectives. We have to have that conversation about, this is what you've got. This is what it's for. Actually, once we get there, most people find that's a really, really useful education piece for their children. But it's those few years back where they're kind of hoping this can slip under the radar, where the conversations are perhaps slightly different.
And a great thing that Rathbones offer actually is a Rathbones Financial Awareness course. So there's one for 16 to 25-year-olds, which is a brilliant way for young people to help improve their financial literacy, given, to be honest, there's limited amount taught in schools at the moment.
Definitely. I think we all know it's such a big gap. And if you are listening to this, if you have children who you think would be interested, please do have a look on the website, get them involved in this kind of thing. It really, really benefits everyone if you start early.
I think on inheritance tax planning as well, it's important to note that having a will is also a simple way to help ensure that your estate is distributed in the way that you want it to be distributed.
Definitely. And obviously what we've given here is the simple side, gifting, get your will in place, have those conversations. It's the first steps with. There are more complex tools available for the right people, things like trusts, things like solutions that qualify for business relief, all very, very relevant, but all very, very individual conversations. So rather than us going into any depth here, I would encourage anybody who is thinking about that side of things to contact their advisor and have a personal conversation about it. I think that is everything we had on the list to deal with in the first podcast here. We do have a second one coming with a bit of further analysis about the Wellbeing Report. So hopefully all of you will tune in then. And thank you very much.
Thank you for listening.